Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
But this is, I newly got into Dynasty, and through that found the Roto Heat guys.
Hey guys, Bryce. I live in I live in St. Paris, Ohio now. Originally lived in Columbus, but just like Jason here, I don't have much social media, so you can mainly just find me on the Facebook or the Discord. And also similar to him, I just got into Dynasty by getting involved into Roto Heat, so it's a whole new element. So make sure you guys go check out the website, look at the articles, and maybe pique some other interests that you might have in fantasy football other than redraft, even though this stream here will just be talking strictly that though. So
absolutely. So we appreciate it if you're watching this live on YouTube or on the Facebook channels. Perhaps you're watching it back later on YouTube or listening to it on your favorite podcast platform. Please like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, click that notification bell. You can be the next person to introduce to Dynasty through the Roto Heat channel, be it Devi, be it the DFS content on Fridays. We're streaming 5 nights a week at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, so we'd love for you guys to join us as frequently as you can. And every Wednesday night, it is the Fantasy Inferno, a redraft focus. So my name is Rob Sullivan. Like I said, I'm your host. You can find me on Twitter. I'm in Discord. I'm in the Facebook groups as well. But we're going to talk tonight about breakout candidates, guys that we think are going to break out in 2020. Before we get into that, though, we're just going to kind of catch up on a little bit of news and notes that are happening around the league. So, guys, we're going to start off with the NFL and the NFLPA agreeing to 0 preseason games. And it appears as though we've had 59 players test positive for COVID thus far. So to both of you, and Jacob, I'll start with you, are you concerned, first of all, what do you think the impact of 0 preseason is going to have on the 2020 season? And are you concerned with the number of positive cases already that the season will start late, won't happen at all, or might be interrupted?
Yeah, it's kind of tough just because no preseason means either rookies or just new guys to the team through free agency or trade won't have necessarily the same type of chemistry. I know they can still work together, but it's just going to be tougher because it is a team sport. I think it's just hard to see how the NFL doesn't have a season at all just because of the revenue. I know it can cost a lot to have that regular COVID testing, but again, I just think the payout is too great. And I just really hope to see, a 2020 season. And I think hopes are high.
Cool. Bryce, what's your thoughts on all this no preseason and COVID stuff?
Yeah, right. With the no preseason, it really just hurt. In my opinion, it just kind of hurts like newer players, like rookies. Even players that are acquired by trade. I think they have the game experience and they have that feeling. So, and they'll get that timing and stuff just through practice. So I'm not too worried about maybe veteran players that transfer teams or whatever, but just like rookies, them not getting like the feel of playing, anybody else might be the only people that I'm worried about. But I'm not too concerned that there's not going to be a season because I think they're just gonna copy what the NBA is doing. The NBA is starting, I think, today, right? Did they start today or tomorrow or something like that?
Yeah, some scrimmages.
Yeah, right. So I knew they got back into it today, and I think they're going to kind of follow suit. The NFL, even if they make most of their money through TV anyway, so if they have to do it with no fans, like the UFC is doing, it will come down to that, and players will play because that's how they're going to get paid. So I'm not worried about them not having a season. It would be weird watching a game without fans and things like that, just like it is like with UFC if anybody watches that. But I'm 99.9% sure that we're going to have a football season.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think that there definitely will be a season. That whole watching with no fans bit, I was watching a little bit of Major League Baseball exhibition. It's weird. Like it just, you never really take into consideration how much the fan component adds to the watching experience, but it's totally weird. So I hope that there is a season. I do think there will be a season. I think what'll be interesting is that it might not be the regular cast of characters that you were watching every Sunday, but there's going to be somebody on the field on Sunday.
Right.
And when it comes to the zero preseason, I think where it really is going to be interesting is teams with new coaching staffs and teams where changed addresses. So new quarterbacks, and we're going to talk about a couple or one of them for sure today, but new quarterbacks on teams or new coaching staff going to leverage the lack of game experience to see how their product is playing out on the field. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. It's been a wild offseason and it's going to continue. So our next piece is Devonta Freeman has hired Drew Rosenhaus to be his agent. And Rosenhaus has come public and said that Freeman is healthy, he's ready to play, and he wants to find a team to sign with by the end of July. So we're getting pretty close to Rosenhaus's sort of self-proposed deadline. Bryce, do you think he signs? And if he does, where do you think he lands?
I think he probably signs somewhere, whether it's probably more as a backup role at this point in his career. It's kind of hard to predict where he might go. If it also depends on what he's kind of demanding price-wise. Then I think he has ties to the 49ers, and if Raheem Mostert wants out, that could be a possibility. And I feel like there's not too many teams with like a huge running back need, but you can always it's always safe to get a good backup running back for the right price. So chances are he'll sign somewhere, and it's probably going to be cheap, and it's going to be for a backup role.
That's fair. Jacob, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually just acquired him in my dynasty for a 4th-round pick, literally hours before this all went through. So I was stoked about that. But when it comes to redraft, I just think he's gonna find a team. There's no doubt about that. It's just where he's been tied. Also, the first couple places were the Buccaneers and the Eagles.
Yeah.
And he was too expensive for their taste. But from the sounds of it, if he brings the price down, I don't see why they wouldn't bite. Especially with the whole Miles Sanders talk in the run by committee and all that. And it wouldn't surprise me, especially as an Eagles fan, if they picked up another guy. But I mean, at the same time, like even a sleeper would be the Patriots. I mean, who haven't the Patriots signed for next to nothing? And they just continue to make moves, and they are also running back by committee. And Sonny Michel's coming off surgery, so you never know.
Yeah, I think that the Bucs I've heard, the Eagles I've heard, I guess his previous agent basically fired him based on the fact that the Seahawks made Freeman an offer. I think they offered him $4 million a year and he turned it down. So there was that component. So he's going to have to drop his price tag considerably. I do think he lands. I still think it's the Eagles. It's just, it makes too much sense for it not to happen. Mm-hmm. But even if it gets to the point where the season starts and like we just talked about with COVID there is going to be players and there's going to be running backs that test positive and that they're gone for weeks at a time. Freeman's going to get a job somewhere if he wants to play. Like, Lamar Miller, probably the same thing. If these guys actually physically can and want to play, they're probably going to end up on the field. So I agree with you both. All right, moving on. Antonio Brown is in the news again, this time with a little bit of a cryptic tweet on Twitter that he is done playing football. Bryce, are you buying that?
I don't know. I don't know if he has much of a choice of being done. It seems like right when he's about to get out of the hole that he's dug himself, and it seemed like he was about to get signed and teams were looking into him, he just jumps right back in it. So with him saying that, teams have got to just be like, where's this guy's head at? And, talent's not the question with Antonio Brown. And I thought he was done when he got cut by the Patriots, because it seems like that's the team. Like, if you get cut by them, your career's done. And that's been said about a lot of players. So, and I thought he would come back, and I thought he was about to sign soon somewhere, and I thought he was going to get, a suspension laid down on him. And then he says this, and I think it just took him, 2 steps back. So I don't see Antonio Brown getting signed by anybody just because of character issues, but I could be very wrong. I wouldn't bet money on it. So I think he's done with football, but I don't think it's his choice.
Fair. I think he's got some issues. There's no doubt about it. He is an absolutely incredibly talented wide receiver. I still think he might be the best talent in the game if he can get his head on straight. The word is that the NFL is waiting for him to sign before they levy his suspension, and that the teams are waiting for the NFL to levy the suspension before they offer him a contract. And the rumor on the street is that the NFL is going to impose an 8-game suspension on him, but the NFL teams don't want to make that investment and take that risk because they don't know what the suspension is going to be. It sounds like the Seahawks did a pretty deep dive into him and that they're interested in signing him, but that's the piece that's holding it up. So I think he plays again if and when this stuff all gets sorted out. Jacob, what do you think?
I just think at this point, it's attention. I feel like every time, kind of like what Bryce was saying, but almost every time, like a similar pattern, when attention stops going on him, he has to put attention back on himself. So it really is just like a maturity thing, that character issue. I think he'll always try and fight the team. I genuinely don't know if he'll ever be signed by anyone. And if he is, I don't know if he'll ever play. Because I just feel like he is just very self-destructive. But I would say with the Seahawks as well, I know I read something today just about Josh Gordon. And if he gets reinstated, they want him. So I would say that cuts ties with AB to Seattle.
I can't imagine Antonio Brown has much leverage to command money, but Josh Gordon is basically league minimum free at this point. And apparently he's locally in Seattle working out. So I agree. If he's reinstated for, I think would be the 4th time, he's probably going to be back on the field. All right. And our last little news item is Mike Zimmer, the Minnesota Vikings head coach, received a multi-year contract extension. Details aren't exactly released. He has a career 57 wins, 38 losses, and 1 tie record, and he's 2-3 in the postseason. What are your thoughts on Mike Zimmer, Jay-Wall? What do you think?
I really don't have, much thought on it. I think, if you're an organization, if you got a guy with a winning record, might as well keep him. The only thing, is the postseason. But again, that just comes with time, talent, and really, at this point, at least for going 1 year in, you really have no idea what you're getting into. So other teams could lose a lot of talent, and you could, so I think this next year is just going to be very skewed. But at the same time, I think keeping around a guy like him, isn't a bad move.
Bryce?
Right. Yeah, I think that, good coaches are kind of hard to find. And I think Mike Zimmer's a pretty good coach. They after the season they just had, him getting signed isn't really surprising. But again, it's this is more of a thing like where you would want to see what Vikings fans' opinions are on it, because
you're about to get
I just don't look right. I don't really, I haven't really thought about. I feel like head coaches don't get looked at, unless they get signed. Usually, contract extensions are usually a good thing that show, that they did a good job. And other than this like past season, I haven't really followed the Vikings very closely. So if he can continue to, take your team to the playoffs, I don't see why, keeping him around wouldn't be such a bad idea.
Yeah, and I ultimately think that's what keeps him employed and got them in this extension. I firmly believe that if they had lost that game to New Orleans last year when they somehow won it, that he probably would have been fired. That being said, he does have a winning record. I think it's very telling that he's sort of the pseudo defensive coordinator. He's kind of like Belichick in a way where that's his defense and he has someone run it for him. The mass exodus of players via free agency out of Minnesota off that defense this year, I think the message is getting old in Minnesota from Mike Zimmer. I think the Chris Spielman and Zimmer are tied at the hip. And as I agree with you guys 100%, as long as they keep winning and making the playoffs, nothing's going to change in Minnesota. But the reality is that's a team that might make the playoffs, and that's about it. So, at some point you have to take a step back or retool or do something to get better. They don't seem to do anything on a yearly basis. They extended Cousins. It sounds like they're working on an extension for Dalvin Cook. Other than trading Diggs, they haven't really done much. So I'm a little skeptical, and I think, fans tend to be a little bit harder on their own teams than their own coaches.
Right.
Like, I'm sure there's Patriots fans out there that don't like Bill Belichick, believe it or not. So that guy's unbelievable.
Maybe.
That's a whole other story. All right. So that's it for news and notes. Let's get into the meat of this. Like I said, we're going to talk about 2020 breakouts. I'm going to start off with you, J-Wall, and I'm going to give you the floor. And why don't you start off with your first guy there? Surprise me with who it is.
Yeah, so my first guy is from New York, plays for the Giants wide receiver, Darius Slayton. I really like him in that offense and just what he did in 2019. He actually led the team in targets. Granted, there was a ton of injuries and whatnot, so that definitely helped. But I think that opportunity really showed what he's capable of. And at the same time, I think that, he's a young guy. Daniel Jones is a young guy. And I just think there's a connection there. And yeah, I like what he has to offer.
Nice. I like him as well. Bryce, what are your thoughts on Darius Slayton?
Yeah, he had similar points that I was going to bring up when I saw that he had him on the list. He's a young guy. Daniel Jones is a young guy. It seems like those, they tend to always, kind of stick together, especially when they're new like that. And then when the opportunity presented itself, he was able to shine. It would just be interesting to see, like, once the group is all healthy and together, because the Giants were net one. I don't think once we're all together healthy, maybe for a few games last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what his role is once that happens, when Saquon's, the primary focus. You got Evan Ingram in there, and then their other wide receiver, his name is eluding me right now.
Or Tate.
It would just
Shepard and Tate?
Yes, Shepard. Oh, yeah, and then Tate's there too as a good slot receiver as well. So it'd be interesting to see, if he continues to put up, numbers and possibly break out. But it's a guy that I think that is, reasonable to get excited about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, you don't talk a lot about second-year breakout wide receivers, and he sort of, in a way, broke out in his first year, considering where he came from. I can't remember where he was drafted, or he was drafted, I believe. But if he was, it was really late. He's kind of a boom-bust wide receiver, right? Like, he had two really big games last year. He was 5 for 154 and 2 in one of them, and he scored 2 touchdowns and had over 120 yards in the other.
21.
Yeah, so those 2 games are 31% of his catches. What I wrote it down here: 37% of his yards and 50% of his touchdowns. So, and he did fade a little bit, to Bryce's point, when guys started to sort of come back into that lineup towards the end of the year. But I'm a fan of Daniel Jones. I'm going to talk about him later on here, and I do see that Darius Slayton has the ability to take the next step. I don't know if it's full breakout, but he's fantasy relevant 100% and absolutely needs to be owned. So I agree. Bryce, who's your first guy?
This one's probably a more obvious choice, and then also a second-year wide receiver, A.J. Brown. And the reason I chose him is I actually got to watch the Titans a lot last year. And A.J. Brown, even in his bad games, was just, I feel like, a dog. Like, the one game I watched him where I kind of got sold on him was, believe it or not, he put up terrible numbers, but it was against the Jaguars, and he was getting guarded by Jalen Ramsey the whole game. And I think it says a lot when the defensive coordinator put Jalen Ramsey on him rather than Corey Davis. So obviously other teams are seeing his talent and things like that. And then the biggest indicator for me that this is about to be an upcoming breakout season for him is he's obviously the number one wide receiver on that team, but he got most of his points the second half of the season, really saw a stride in like the last 4 games. Put up like, I think, a 40-point week and then a high 20-point game in there. And you have to think that hopefully that momentum starts to carry into the next season. He's a good route runner. He's big and he's fast. So I think AJ Brown's a guy that a lot of people, he is overhyped. I will say that a lot of people do have him too high, but I think that he is still a breakout candidate for this upcoming season.
Wonderful.
What do
J-Wall.
you think? Okay, J-Wall.
I like AJ Brown a lot. I think the dude is crazy talented. And I know it was like this, when he was drafted and like, oh, it's just Tennessee, whatnot. And I think it helps that he is, the guy there because he's going to get his targets. He's going to get his looks. But I also think that there's going to be regression from Tannehill. There's got to be some. And I think that does affect A.J. Brown some too. But at the same time, off Bryce's point, AJ popped onto the scene really in the second half when Tannehill was there. So there's clearly a really good connection. Tannehill's, experienced. He's a veteran. And I think that he, will teach AJ a lot. And
Right.
I definitely see high hopes. I feel like he did break out his rookie year. Definitely, again, because he was on the Titans. But then, got that overhype, especially when he posted that picture of himself and he's just jacked. Just like most of the guys on the Titans. But yeah, I think, the talent is there. I love him.
Yeah, the talent, there's no disputing the talent. I think, what was he, 20.2 yards per reception last year. My biggest concern there is I think A.J. Brown is really tied to Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry can continue to have a good productive season on the ground, that's going to open up stuff for A.J. If he struggles at all, you got to figure every defensive coordinator in the league is going to double team A.J. Brown. I don't know why you wouldn't. So I think he struggles a little bit there. I agree with J-Wall that Tannehill is going to regress. Tannehill was unconscious. It's like he sold his soul last year. He was QB 3 or 4, I think it was, from the time he took over that starting role to the end of the season. They scored, I talked about it last week, they scored a ridiculous amount of touchdowns. Their efficiency was crazy. They only attempted 18 field goals the entire season. So he does regress, but there's no doubt in my mind that he's incredibly talented. He's, like you said, he's jacked. He runs like the wind. He's built like a house. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why on 52 receptions he put up the numbers that he did. So I do think that the Titans regress. I do think, though, it leads to more targets because I think they're going to be forced to throw the football more. I think it benefits AJ in that case. I think it also benefits guys like Jonnu Smith. But it all kind of comes back to Derrick Henry for me. If he can continue to be that guy that can pound the ball on short yardage and first and second downs, then that's going to open up the passing lanes and the passing game in general. But if he struggles at all with Jack Conklin going off to Cleveland, then you stack the box a little bit, and it's going to be tough sailing for A.J. Brown. But I agree, Bryce. I think that's a good call.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll throw my first one out at you, and it's kind of low-hanging fruit. I think it's a relatively easy one to call, and I think that most people would agree with, and it's Kenyon Drake, running back for the Arizona Cardinals. So Drake in 4 seasons in Miami, kind of underutilized. It was frustrating for his fantasy owners. We also had the talent that he had, but he never really came to fruition. And I think the most touches he had in the season was 173 back in 2018, and he was a mid-teens running back that season. Started off last year in Miami, was dealt midway through the season, and from his time in Arizona till the end of the season, he was running back 3. He was averaging over 19 touches a game in Arizona in that time frame. He's in an offense that has a second-year head coach that's only going to get better, a second-year quarterback that's only going to get better. They've added DeAndre Hopkins. They want to run 4 wide receivers. Drake can run the ball and catch the ball. I think he's looking at a monster season to the point where I think he could almost finish as a top 5 running back. So, yeah, I'm pretty all in on him breaking out and establishing himself as that true RB1. J-Wall, what do you think?
I couldn't agree more. I have always loved Drake. Again, with the talent. He's just so good, but I think it's just so frustrating seeing him in Miami because I feel like it's just been the graveyard for a lot of guys. But man, when he went to Arizona, and David Johnson is getting older and whatnot, but he beat out David Johnson immediately and proved why. And again, David Johnson might be getting old. He's had some down years and whatnot, but he's still a great player. Like, it takes a talented person to beat out a guy like that, especially because they're used to him. But yeah, I read the stat about the 173 touches was the most that he had, and I love the additions at wide receiver. I think that's going to open things up for him. And again, kind of like what you were saying with Derrick Henry is like, man, when they're gonna give him the ball so that it can open up that pass game. And I just love him in Arizona.
What do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, right. I thought it was weird when I wasn't on the Kenyon Drake because, there was actually some running backs before him in Miami that seemed to thrive. I mean, Jay Ajayi was like on top of the world at one point, and before him, Lamar Miller was the man. And they had a lot of value on a crappy team. So it was kind of weird to see a talented guy like Drake, and it's not like his talent was unknown. Like, it seemed like a lot of people could see it, but it just wasn't getting utilized. So it's like he get traded to Arizona and got the opportunity, and everyone was like, finally. So I think it's definitely once I saw that, then I was like, okay, yeah, I see what people were talking about. So yeah, Kenyon Drake is definitely is a player that everyone should be excited about, and rightfully so. So there's not much else I could say about it that you guys haven't. He's getting the opportunity. Like you were saying, Sully, that whole offense is going to be exciting to watch this upcoming season. A lot of players stepping into their second year, arguably the best wide receiver in football on their team now. So Kenyon Drake's set up to get some points this year. That's for sure.
Cool. Awesome. So before we get into our next kind of round of player breakouts that we perceive or that we see happening this year, just want to remind you, if you're following along on Facebook or on YouTube, feel free to ask us some questions. Drop them in the chat. We're going to get to those a little bit later on in the program, but I just want to know that we're there for you. We're going to answer those questions. So don't hold back. Pound us out. I got two really smart guys here with me, so I'll answer those questions for you when I can't. So moving on, I'm going to take this one. I'll start it off. And my next breakout for 2020 is New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones. And this one's a little eat crow for me because I was hardcore in the Giants wasted the 6th overall draft choice last year. I thought it was a pick that they could have waited until later in the first round to make. I thought it was a guy who wasn't even going to develop to be a decent starting quarterback. And in 13 games, he was pretty darn good. He had some big games. He had some bad games. I think his 16-game pace projected out to over 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns. Where he runs into some trouble is he averaged an interception a game, and he fumbled the ball 13 times in 13 games, and he lost 11 of them. So the way I see it, we talked a little bit about it with Darius Slayton. Saquon missed 3 games and was a shell of himself. Tate was suspended to start the season. Shepard missed some time, and Ingram missed half the year. And even Darius Slayton himself missed 2 games last year. So he gets all those guys onto the field. I think he has the ability to be knocking on the door of a top 12 season. His numbers, I ran them, they're projected out to being about QB 10 where Aaron Rodgers was last year. So if he can repeat last year, even with the fumbles and all the other stuff, he's in that ballpark. My only real concern there is Jason Garrett's the offensive coordinator in New York now. He seems to have not run the most efficient offenses over the last couple of years. So I'm kind of concerned on that. But I do think Daniel Jones is looking like a legit NFL starter and a good fantasy quarterback, and proving me wrong for my take last year. What do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, I agree. When the Giants took him, I thought they should take a guy like Dwayne Haskins, who always did pretty well. But when Daniel Jones got thrown in the situation he did with nobody fully healthy around him, or that team not put together the whole season, and he did as well as he did, it says a lot. And I same thing. He proved me wrong. So it'll be interesting to see him getting a full season with the starters. Hope, fingers crossed, none of them get hurt or anything like that. Because I think he throws some good balls. He throws good deep balls. He's got good timing. I'm excited to watch Daniel Jones. I'm not a Giants fan, obviously, being a Patriot fan, but that offense again is fun. They're going to be fun to watch. They have in my opinion, the best running back in football. They have some solid receivers, a good tight end, a decent O-line. There's no reason the Giants shouldn't have kind of almost a bounce back season themselves. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. Daniel Jones is a guy that not only you can probably buy late, especially in redraft leagues, where you can let top tier quarterbacks slip. Nobody's got their eye on Daniel Jones unless you're playing with some people that do like a lot of research or some Giants fans. So that could be a super valuable guy that you could get real late, even just like some scraps. So Daniel Jones is a guy that I do like coming into this upcoming season.
Jay, you're an Eagles fan, so you know Daniel Jones well.
Yeah.
What's your take?
I actually, when I first found out about Daniel Jones, because I only really did redraft, and I wasn't super into rookies, but I heard about him during the draft, and I was like, who in the heck is this guy? Yeah. And I watched a lot of tape on him and whatnot, and I actually really liked what I saw, and I saw what the Giants saw. I actually took him last year. I think it was my last pick, or even I think I might even picked him off waivers immediately. But I felt like he might be a sleeper, especially with Eli and whatnot. But I feel like he proved me right in some games, just showing me the talent that he possesses. Very boomer bust last year. Again, you can blame injuries. He's a rookie, a lot of stuff. But I like how the offseason he's been working on ball protection, which obviously was huge last year. And then they also drafted Andrew Thomas to help that O-line. So hopefully he doesn't have to protect as much. But on top of that, again, I think you just see in a handful of games just the potential that is there. And if he gets going, if his guys stay healthy, I feel like the sky's the limit for this guy. As crazy as top 8, even maybe top 5. I mean, if again, he has that potential. Will it happen this year? Top 5? That's a stretch, but I could definitely see a QB1 this next year.
I love it. I just dropped a bold predictions article on our website a couple of days or last week, I think it was, and that was one of mine. That Daniel Jones is a top 5 quarterback. I think if he turns around and just hands the ball to that running back, that cuts away a lot of those turnovers. Also, the defense still stinks, and the team still, even though they'll be better, isn't good. So he's going to throw the football a lot too. So I really like the way it shapes up for him if he can stay healthy, and he can run a little bit. I think he put up about 280 yards around. So things are looking up for Daniel Jones. I think he definitely has the opportunity to break out. Where am I going next? J-Wall, let's have player number 2, my friend.
So it's a fan favorite. It's my boy Hayden Hurst from the Atlanta Falcons, tight end, and I'm really big on this guy. I have drafted him as my tight end 1 in redraft league. I just like him a lot. He's a round 1 talent who, unfortunately got overshadowed by Mark Andrews, but that doesn't mean that he still doesn't have talent. And it's not like he was beaten out by some scrub. I'm going to bring that up again, but, he was beaten out by the tight end 3 of last year. And so, again, he saw the field a lot, but Baltimore is so run heavy that, when he was on the field, it was mostly blocking, but he was good at it. And so I think even that will get him to stay on the field and whatnot. But he's not going to get Austin Hooper touches by any means, but he's going to get volume. I think the one thing about the Falcons is volume, and for tight ends especially, just because there's such a little gap between tight end 15 and tight end 10. I feel like it's, again, a lot of it comes down to volume, and I think he has that. And again, he's just a super athletic dude who has just had nothing but praise from really everyone, especially in the Falcons organization. They spent a second round on him because they know the potential that he has.
Cool. I'm going to save my comments to last for this one. Bryce, what do you think on Hayden Hurst?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say he's a breakout because he hasn't had a good season yet, and this is definitely the best opportunity that he has to get some more volume. And I agree completely with what you said. He's not going to get Austin Hooper numbers or anything like that. But I think especially when you look at tight ends, you have to look at the quarterback and the team and see how they use him. It seems like Matt Ryan has always utilized a tight end in his offense. I don't think I would choose Hayden Hurst as my number one tight end in a lot of leagues. I guess if I was, it was the last position I picked, I wouldn't be super upset if that was the guy I got. But yeah, he's definitely a breakout candidate. Maybe not like a for sure one that a lot of people see coming because there's no guarantee even wins that starting role. Who says he doesn't get beat by another tight end 3 that nobody's heard of? So yeah, the potential's there. I like him definitely better in Atlanta than I did in Baltimore. So we'll see.
So first of all, I agree. I think he is a breakout candidate this year, and I agree with Bryce's point. Is the dude's done nothing, so it's not hard to break out from where he's at. 62 targets in over 2 seasons, and yeah, he was hurt in his first season. He had a foot injury in training camp. The dude's pretty old too. He was a baseball player for a few years before he became a football player. I do like his opportunity in Atlanta. I won't lie. Offensive coordinator Dirk Cutter has always had a relevant tight end. We all hang on the hopes that O.J. Howard will once be something, and the season that he was is when Dirk Cutter was the coach in Tampa Bay. My only concern here, and I have a few concerns, is number one is can Hayden Hurst hold up to the workload of being an every sort of tight end? He played, I think it was about 30 some odd, 40% of the snaps in Baltimore. And if I'm Matt Ryan and I'm dropping back to pass, I think I'm going to look for Julio Jones. And if I can't find Julio Jones, I'm going to look for Calvin Ridley. And then I'm probably going to dump the ball off to Todd Gurley. So that's another component that Hurst really hasn't had is Gurley's ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I have Hurst at tight end 13. I listed him as a breakout in an article that I wrote about breakouts, so I can't say that he's not. And Jay, well, you're going to have to remind me later what our bet is because I keep forgetting. So if I ever lose, I need to pay. But in the article that I wrote I basically said, is Hayden Hurst Austin Hooper? No. But can he be 60% of Austin Hooper? I think he can. And last year, 60% of Austin Hooper was 8.88 PPR fantasy points a game. And it was tight end 11. So it's possible. Like I said, I have him at 13. I don't think he's going to, blow the doors off of the NFL. And to Bryce's point, I don't know if I'd want him as my top tight end. But if I miss out on those 4 or 5 guys that I kind of like, and it's late in my draft, 11th, 12th round, Hurst is going to be there. I'm going to take him. And I agree. I think he could break out. So, Jay, what was our bet?
It was that he was going to be a top 10.
Oh, man, I'm rich. That's easy. Bryce, am I going to win that bet?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of young tight ends I'm excited about that I think are going to, come out this season. Dallas Goedert's one. Blake Jarwin. I'm high on Blake Jarwin this year. That's the guy I think that last year was Darren Waller for me. So I was good last year. So we'll see if I'm good again this year.
Well, then I'm all in on Blake Jarwin, and I'm happy to hear that in my dynasty teams I have a bunch of shares of him because I draft so bad that I just had to grab tight ends at the end, and it was him. So that's good. Wicked. All right. So, Bryce, where are we at? Are we up to you for your second guy, correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
My second guy, is a quarterback, veteran quarterback that I think is finally getting the opportunity that he hasn't had since he was in Minnesota, Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater in his limited time last year, he produced. I think he only played 5 games. I think 6 games. He had 9 touchdowns and only threw 2 picks. So he's secure with the ball. He's smart with it. He might not put up like crazy numbers, not top 5, not even maybe top 7 numbers, but he was in a super elite offense as well with the Saints. Definitely like a top 3 offense when you talk about skill position wise. And I don't think he's really downgrading heavily when he's going to Carolina. He's got Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel. Hopefully they get a tight end that steps up. Ian Thomas seems like he's a big-bodied guy that might be valuable in the red zone. So, and Christian McCaffrey is getting a lot of his points out of the air too. So they're going to keep him involved in the pass game because why wouldn't they? So I think Teddy Bridgewater is a good candidate for a breakout player. He hasn't got the opportunity to start. And now that he's getting one and he's getting put in the offense that he is, I think he, produces similar numbers to where he's smart with the football. He might not get you, 3 or 4 touchdowns every week, but, 2 at minimum, even asking for 3 here, sprinkled in here and there. That's definitely something that you can't complain about. And like I said, he only threw 2 picks in 6 games. That's pretty good for not a backup quarterback. So I'm excited about Teddy Bridgewater. I know a lot of people just think it's like meh, but in the offseason season, that's why I think that he's going to have a good year.
Cool.
So
I agree, and I think we're agreeing too much tonight. It's a little dull,
right,
but
yeah.
I look at Bridgewater. I'm a Vikings guy, so I always have had a soft spot for Teddy. He had a kind of a horrible freak accident that cost him the prime of his career. Like you said, he's a backup quarterback. He played in 5 games last season. He 9 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. He completed 69.7% of his passes, and that's by design, right? Like Teddy's not an air yards kind of quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to be, but he can still be effective. You run his numbers, and I ran them this just before we got on here. Is that 5-game thing, or that 5-game span in New Orleans pans out to 4,288 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, and 6 picks. I'm taking that on my team all day long. Now,
Right.
yes, he was in the Saints offense, and it is still pretty elite, but he had Alvin Kamara missing time with injury, and he had Latavius Murray as his running back. He had Michael Thomas, who is all world and doesn't matter who his quarterback is. And that was about it. So in Carolina, he does have the players that you mentioned, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson, and especially to me, Christian McCaffrey. And the wild card factor to me is the fact that the Panthers really went about their business this offseason and got guys that Matt Rule knows and got guys that Joe Brady knows. And Brady, before he was running LSU's offense and helping revitalize Joe Burrow's college career, he was in New Orleans. And the story goes is that he was way down in the coaching ranks in New Orleans. The Saints traded for Teddy Bridgewater, in the preseason from the Jets that season. And it was Brady's job to get Bridgewater up to speed on the offense. And they bonded and they spent all the time together. So when Brady got the job in Carolina and Rule asked him who he wanted, that was the first guy on his list. Mm-hmm. So he knows the player. He'll scheme him an offense. There'll be a ton of stuff close to the line of scrimmage. It could even make a guy like Ian Thomas, the tight end, relevant. Mm-hmm. I think Bridgewater, he's not. I don't think he's going to light the world on fire and be a top 12 quarterback, but I think he's a totally a guy you could pick up off your waiver wire and plug and play and stream against the right opponents. And sort of like the Giants, Carolina stinks, and they're going to be really bad. They spent their entire draft class on the defense trying to rebuild it. They lost Luke Kuechly. They're going to be bad, and they're going to have to throw whether Teddy wants to or not, and we'll see what he's made of. So I like it. I could see Teddy breaking out, kind of like Hayden Hurst hasn't had an opportunity to do anything in the past, so let's hope that he steps up and has a pretty good season. Jay, your thoughts on Teddy B?
I love Teddy. I think I think he's a really good football player. Great guy, high character. I just am not a fan fantasy-wise. The only reason that I would like Teddy is because Christian McCaffrey, which, I mean, he's just kind of like what you said, like all world. Like, I mean, there's nothing that he can't do, and Teddy can make so much money off of just dumping passes and letting CMC take care of the rest. But, you can't deny that he has a really good wide receiver core in those 3 guys. But again, I just think I see a lot of inconsistency in 2020 from him, just because I just feel like he was kind of a product of the system in New Orleans. And, he walked into a good thing. Taysom Hill has had a lot of success. Not dogging on him. He's great, but I just think Sean Payton's a really good coach, and he can make it work with, and he also had Michael Thomas. So, again, I think he's a talented guy. I just don't like him for fantasy. I guess I might take him as my QB2, but I feel like he's more of a guy who I would maybe stream off waivers, but he's not a guy who I would draft personally.
That's fair. Jay, well, in fairness, Mohamed Sanu has better passing stats than Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is a productive gadget receiver, kick returner, everything else. He's not a quarterback.
No. But what I'm saying is he'll line up at quarterback and make things happen, by running the ball. But
sure. But there's a reason Bridgewater started those 5 games, right?
No, for sure. But I'm saying, you can plug some stuff into that offense.
What's that, Bryce?
I said it's good that like, at least one of us had disagreed at this point because we've all been agreeing the whole time. Thank God.
Like the fantasy.
Yeah, I could see why you think that. So you're just saying, obviously, that the Saints offense was the reason for his success, and you don't see him carrying that same success to Carolina. And I think otherwise, which is well, I mean, there's only one way to tell, and that's the season to come up. So
for sure. I think he's talented. I just don't think he's as talented as he was on the Saints for those 5 games.
Yeah, you almost like see him as like kind of like Brady this past year, where he's good for his team, but he's not good for fantasy. You know what I mean? That's what I kind of I can see that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jay, why don't we stay with you? Give us your third guy.
My third guy, he really kind of popped onto the scene this offseason from Pittsburgh, wide receiver Deontay Johnson. I drafted Juju last year with my 9th pick, and it was tough. Thankfully, I traded for the first pick and got Saquon, but man, get rid of Juju like after week 4. But with that, I think I realized a lot of things, and that is that Juju, to me, I know quarterback situation and whatnot, but I just don't see him filling that wide receiver 1 role for that team. And I also think that teams have no choice but to double team him, which will leave Deontay Johnson roaming free. He had a lot of success last year, very inconsistent last year, but again, I chalk that up to QB play. With Big Ben back, as long as he stays healthy, I just really like his upside. I think he easily has the potential of outscoring Juju next year. And again, I think Juju is very talented. I just think that he is a better second man on a team than he is a number 1 guy. But I think, Deontay steps in and plays that role that Juju did when AB was there. And I think Juju was like wide receiver 9 in the year that AB was there. Yeah. And so, again, I like his upside to be even really low-end wide receiver 1. I feel like that's his ceiling, and I would take the chance on him.
I like it. Bryce, your thoughts on Deontay Johnson?
Yeah, I think when you go back and talk about Juju, I steered absolutely clear of him last year because I was afraid that he would not do well in the wide receiver 1 position, and I ended up being right. I even questioned myself on that because you can't not like that guy. He seems like a good guy. He's fun. He does a lot of stuff off the field and things like that, and he's an entertainer. And he's young, so you can't help but be excited. But I worried about it, and I steered clear. I don't own a single share of Juju Smith-Schuster, and I'm glad I don't. That offense seems to always make that wide receiver 2 spot thrive. So Deontay Johnson, I'm looking at his points here. I mean, he was targeted 85 times. He caught 5 touchdowns, over 600 yards, and over 50 receptions with the backup quarterback. So, yeah, I think he's definitely a guy to be excited about. I want to disagree, but I can't. So I can't help but think that Big Ben is going to realize that defenses are going to still see that Juju's a better wide receiver on that team, and they're going to focus him, and he's going to get the main focus. And guys like Deontay Johnson are just going to be able to get more opportunity. He's going to see more targets, and he's going to see worse. He's not going to get the better of the defense focusing him. So yeah, Deontay Johnson, in my opinion, is definitely a breakout candidate at that wide receiver 2 spot in Pittsburgh. What do you think, Sully?
I agree. This is getting a little silly. What I don't agree on necessarily is Juju. What I'm very interested to see with Pittsburgh this year is what Roethlisberger looks like coming back. They say his elbow is better than it ever was, so they're not going to tell us that it's worse. So we're going to have to see what it looks like once he gets on the field. The interesting fact to me is, if Chase Claypool can play on the outside and they can move Juju back in the slot, then it's a game changer for Juju again. And I think it was 2 things that really hurt him last year. And I know I'm supposed to be talking about Deontay Johnson, but 2 things that really hurt Juju was, number 1, AB was gone and he was the man. And number 2, they put him on the outside and he was subject to double coverage all the time. And he played with statistically the worst 2 quarterbacks in the NFL last year. But so did Deontay Johnson. and he thrived. He did really, really well. And like Bryce said, he had, I think it was 80, almost 60 catches, almost 700 yards, and he scored 5 times. He made James Washington disappear. And Mason Rudolph and James Washington played in college together, and even he wouldn't throw him the football. So I referenced an article earlier, my bold predictions. I have Deontay Johnson scoring more fantasy points than Juju Smith-Schuster and finishing as a top 10 wide receiver this year. And I know that sounds insane, but I don't see why not. If Juju's commanding the number one and maybe, the number one corner and a safety over the top, and it gives Ben the opportunity to hit the home run with Deontay Johnson here and there. If James Conner's healthy and he can keep the defense honest that way, the Steelers could very easily really sneaky be one of those top offenses again. The Steelers, I think the year before last, led the league in pass attempts with like 630, crazy number. Last year it was down almost 200. So the big talk was where are the targets from AB going to go? Well, they just went away. So with Roethlisberger coming back, hopefully the targets come back. Hopefully that offense can, put up some fantasy points, because that's why we play this game. And I agree. I think Deontay Johnson is a guy to watch for sure. Good call, Jay Wall. Bryce, you want to go or you want me to go?
You go ahead.
All right. So my guy's another guy I've been pounding the drum on all offseason, and it's Atlanta Falcons. Did I say that right, Bryce?
Yep.
Awesome. I'm working on that for 2 weeks. Calvin Ridley. So Ridley in 2019, he had 63 catches on 93 targets, 866 yards and 7 touchdowns in 13 games. The year before, he scored 10 times as a rookie. He just projects to be a monster this season. I ran the numbers and I kind of compared him to 2 guys that broke out in their third years last year. One was DJ Moore and one was Kenny Golladay. The catches, the yards are on the same projection from year 1 to year 2. The touchdowns are a little different. I don't think Ridley's I don't think it was reasonable for him to catch 10 touchdowns as a rookie and 7 more in his second season. I do think that stuff comes down a little bit, but I think he is, his career kind of took off in Atlanta when Mohamed Sanu was traded to New England, and he became the legit number 2 guy in that offense. And he's getting up to that age, and so is Julio, where that parallel can kind of be made between Roddy White and Julio Jones, can now sort of be made between Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. I think Roddy fell off at about 33. Julio's 32. I learned a long time ago to stop saying that Julio Jones is going to fall off. He's not. I think he's legit top 4 wide receiver, and until he isn't, I'll say that he is. But I'm all in on Calvin Ridley. I think he's a top 12 wide receiver. I think he can score more fantasy points than Julio Jones this year. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think it can happen. And I think he's an absolute lock to break out in 2020. Jay?
I did not ride the Ridley bandwagon. I like him a lot. Like, I've always liked him, but I just like him as a flex play. And I know he's very talented. I know he's one of those Alabama guys who, he produces in the NFL. I think the biggest thing that I've always had with him, again, really like him as a player, but he's always been so inconsistent. He reminds me of kind of a lower or a worse Amari Cooper, like fantasy wise in that way. Because he's obviously not as, I don't know. I think they're both pretty good. Let's be honest.
Sure.
But I just see both of those guys, and I see a lot of inconsistency. And as a fantasy owner, I love consistency. But again, Mohamed Sanu left, Hooper left. So there's gonna be that volume that I talked about with Hurst. I like him. He's going to be a wide receiver 2, easy, hands down. I just personally don't see him in the wide receiver 1 conversation. I think he's overvalued, but not saying that it's impossible. Because again, he is a talented guy. But man, I don't know how you dog on Julio. I think that Julio is one of those freaks who, I don't know if you saw the video of T.O. and Tyreek racing.
Yeah.
And I just see Julio is obviously not a T.O. type athlete where he's going to look like that for that long. But I just think that athleticism that he possesses and the skills that he has, man, I just don't see him slowing down for another three years at least. So I still personally see him as the top dog there. But I think Ridley will get his.
Yeah, I think there's been, I'm trying to think, there's been like 3 or 4 teammates as top 12 wide receivers in the last, since about 2013. Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb did it. Diggs and Thielen did it. Somebody did it last year, I think.
Mike Evans and
Chris Godwin did it last year. And that's just what I see with those two guys this year. I see what you're saying. I totally get it. I question the inconsistency part, though. Wide receiver 22 in his rookie season, wide receiver 22 in his sophomore season, and only 13 games played. Where is he inconsistent?
I just say like points like per game kind of thing, because I mean he'll have 3 games in a row where he puts up 18 to 25, and then he'll put up 5 points next 2 weeks, and then it's back up, and then I feel like that is what I've seen a lot of. And some of his down weeks aren't terrible. They're closer to like 10 points. But with how high people are on him, I want my guy a little more consistent, kind of like that same problem that I have with Amari Cooper, and I love Amari Cooper.
Fair enough. All right, I'm rambling, and we're gonna have to speed it along. So, Bryce, I want to hear your thoughts on Calvin Ridley, and then we'll go to your last guy.
Yeah, Ridley's the guy. Looking at his numbers, it's weird seeing that his rookie and his sophomore season are literally 1 target off difference, 1 reception off difference, and the yards are within 45. So I don't know. I don't want to say, I can't completely say that I think he's going to be a breakout player, but I'm not going to say he's not, because he'd be the guy that make me eat my words. So he's got the potential. He's definitely got that potential to break out to be, a similar situation of that Mike Evans and Godwin, Nelson and Cobb, as you mentioned earlier. But I'm just not quite sold on it. I think Matt Ryan gives him more opportunities. He could be that guy. I don't see him kind of doing what Julio and Roddy did, because I just don't think he's as talented enough to take. I don't know if I would be comfortable if Ridley was the number 1 receiver in his offense. I think he almost is better as that number 2 role. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wouldn't put him in the top 12, but I wouldn't be surprised if I saw him, creep up in there either.
Good stuff. A little bit of debate, a little banter. I love it.
Right.
All right, Bryce, take us away. Bring us home with your third breakout for 2020.
This guy should bring up a couple, eyebrows. I've got, and I'm not biased on this one because I did not like him at all coming into the season last year because of Brady, but Tonyan Michel is my last breakout candidate. His first year on the scene, he performed pretty well. I think he eclipsed 900 yards, and he didn't even play all the games that year. And averaged, I think, like 4.4 yards a carry or 4.3, something like that. This last season definitely disappointed a lot of owners. I saw it coming. I thought a lot of teams would notice that Tonyan Michel's in. That means they're going to run the ball. The Patriots' run game is so predictable, it would infuriate me watching them because, Tonyan's in there and they're in the I formation. They're about to try and run the ball. And then they'd be in the shotgun formation, and James White would run the ball, and for some reason he'd get 12 yards, and people are thinking that he should be the guy, but it's because the defense are on their toes. They're not scared that Tonyan Michel's about to go out for passes. So I think with Cam Newton, it's definitely going to be a little bit harder to tell because but I think the Patriots have to lean on their run game this upcoming season. Their wide receiver talent is not proven to be good. Julian Edelman's old. N'Keal Harry is not proven, and Mohamed Sanu's old. So if they can lean on the run game and Tonyan Michel can get his feet moving and they can be a little less predictable, I think he has the talent. If they give him the opportunity, he can be a guy that slides into a high wide receiver 2 spot rather than a flex, maybe like a flex player wide receiver 3 spot, depending on your league format this past year. So definitely a guy I think that can eclipse 1,000 yards and get double-digit touchdowns if given the opportunity this upcoming season.
Yeah, when I look at Tonyan Michel, I always go back to that playoff run. Was that 2 years ago? And he was
his rookie
lights out. Was that his rookie year?
Yeah.
He was lights out. He was running for 100 and change, and he was scoring 2-3 touchdowns a game. And I thought, all my shares of them, because I had a ton of them, I was like, here we go. I think the biggest thing with Tonyan Michel is if he can stay healthy, I think he absolutely will break out. I looked up on what is the website, Sports Injury Predictor, and they have a 52.4% chance that Sony Michel gets injured at some point during the season and misses 2 to 3 games. I don't know how the hell they come up with those numbers, but I think Sony had another offseason surgical procedure this year. If he can stay healthy, I totally agree. I've been on record as saying since they brought Cam Newton to town, they're going to run the ball a ton. I think the Patriots lead the league in rushing attempts, and I could see it. I could definitely see him if he can find the end zone and stay on the field. Breakout. Jay, what do you think?
Don't like him at all. I mean, yeah, he disappointed like crazy last year. Damian Harris, basically didn't see the ball last year. But I mean, they've already talked about him. He's going to share touches. But again, that's where it's nice where they will run the ball a ton. So that's not necessarily saying that Michelle won't get any touches. But I just not a big believer. Especially with that offseason injury. It looks like there's been talks about Damian Harris starting the year of 2020, and I don't know. I just think, again, we haven't seen anything from Damian Harris, but I think he could give him a run for his money. I really do.
He's got those ties to Alabama, and Belichick and Saban are
exactly.
like that. So I could I don't see him starting by any means, but I wouldn't be surprised if he came in and had like that weird Jonas Gray season where he comes in, lights it up for 4 years, and never plays again. So
yeah,
so.
Yeah. I think Harris touched the ball 4 times last year. I think.
Yeah.
So. Cool. So
yeah, I don't think he picked up the blocking.
No, that's totally fair, and that's I know we had some honorable mentions, and we've kind of run out of time. This rookie host has blabbered and ran it a little bit longer. So I'm going to leave our honorable mentions on the shelf. I want to kind of address some of our listener questions. So over on YouTube, and Bryce, if you can take a look at Facebook for me, just see if you see anything there. But over on YouTube, Matt Bradley asked us, do you think that Preston Williams is going to ball this year? And I know that was Jay Wall's honorable mention, guys. So Jay, I'm going to go to you for this one. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to answer that question.
Man, I love Preston Williams. I went out and got him because I was like, I need this man on my team. I actually, last year I drafted Devontae Parker and really late, and it ended up obviously paying off like crazy. But if you look at the numbers, man, when Preston Williams was out there, he was the number 1 receiver, number 1 in targets, number 1 in yards. I mean, he's a stud. And I just continue to see that happening. Again, I love Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzmagic is, he's a dog. I know that he's not consistent and whatnot, but he's a dog and he puts up numbers. And then Tua, if Tua gets a chance to play, if they get on the same page, with Tua's talent, I just think the sky's the limit for Preston Williams.
Cool. Bryce, any thoughts on Preston Williams?
I honestly didn't follow him much. I know he did kind of come on the scene late in the season, so you can kind of, again, I like that trend where if you kind of show up later in the season, hopefully you can kind of follow that up into the upcoming season. So I could see why a lot of people have hype, but I haven't done enough, research on him. Haven't looked into him much. I didn't watch the Dolphins play because they weren't very exciting. So totally. Other than a couple games. So
totally, ton of upside. I think he was an undrafted free agent. He was kind of one of those college bad boys that teams were afraid to draft, but his college numbers were off the charts sick. I'm the same. I didn't really know anything about him, and by the time I started to pay attention to him, he tore his ACL and he was out for the rest of the year, unfortunately. So I'm not a Devontae Parker guy, and I think that Preston is going to grab hold of that role as long as that knee is right and he can get back to it. So love it. Next question I see over on YouTube is, are you guys more excited to see Miles Sanders this year or Kenyon Drake?
Oh, Kenyon Drake for sure. I think Miles Sanders is so overhyped. And I just don't like how I would like it better if the coach hasn't proven time and time again he likes running back by committee, but Kenyon Drake, I don't even know who the backup is there. I do know who it is, but I can't remember his name. But I don't see him getting any competition for touches. So I'm definitely more excited for Kenyon Drake in that offense.
Cool. Jay, you're an Eagles fan, so are you more excited for Sanders or Drake?
Sanders. I have to. I'd be remiss if I didn't say him. And I love Kenyon Drake. I just And I know Bryce thinks he's overhyped, but I think he's under. I think the potential there. I think people are very love him or hate him, especially because he's in that Eagles offense that does love running back by committee. But especially if they don't pick up a backup to him this offseason, you're really going to tell me that Boston Scott. I love Boston Scott, but you really think that he's going to take touches from Miles Sanders? You're drunk. But yeah, I'm a really big fan. Great hands as well. I think they're both comparable, though. I don't think you can go wrong with either in 2020.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be happy to have either one of them on my roster. I'm going to take Kenyon Drake to Bryce's point. Chase Edmonds is the guy that's the backup there. They also drafted Eno Benjamin, who's insignificant. Chase can play if he gets the chance, but let's be real. Kenyon Drake has that backfield. Miles Sanders is going to share touches, Jay, and Boston Scott is going to catch some passes. He's the Darren Sproles 2.0 for that offense. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be as productive, but he's going to be on the field. And I firmly believe that the Eagles are still going to add someone. It might be Freeman. It might be Lamar Miller. It might be some guy we've never heard of. But I just don't see them giving that workload that Sanders is going to need to compete with Drake in that backfield. So that would be my choice as well. Bryce, do you have any action? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I said agree to disagree.
Yeah. That's okay. Maybe we'll double or nothing on the Hurst bet you're going to lose. Double or nothing on the Hurst bet you'll lose to me. I'll take all your money.
I genuinely think Drake's ceiling is definitely higher for 2020.
Yeah, like I said, you can't go wrong with it. You can't go wrong with either one. Bryce, sorry, was there any questions over on Facebook?
Just two quick ones. Another one, that Ronald Jones breakout in 2020, buy or sell. He was my honorable mention. Ben Fisher asked this. He was my honorable mention. I think you buy him now and then you sell him during the season. That's what I would do personally, because I think, Brady was going to retire in a year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's next year, the year after, or 5 years from now. Who knows? But Ronald Jones, I think, has the opportunity with in that offense to become a good PPR value. And if he cannot get tripped up so easy, and he knows and he learns the blocking scheme, that he is going to have the opportunity to have his highest value. The thing is, some people might be valuing him a little high just because Brady's in that offense. So if you can buy him cheap, do it, and then sell him during the season. That's my opinion. So do you guys have any opinions on that?
Jay, what's your take on Rojo?
I like him. I think he's definitely got talent, but I wouldn't take him any higher than a flex. I mean, if you're taking him as a wide receiver too.
Oh, he's a running back.
What?
He's a running back.
Oh, did I say wide receiver? RB2.
Yeah, that's all good.
I just think I think he's a good flex option.
Cool. I'm not a fan, never have been. I think his best chance of being fantasy relevant is if they install social distancing on the football field and you can't go within 6 feet of each other. Then he might score some touchdowns. But the guy goes down too easily. There's no denying he has speed. But as soon as he's a first contact going down kind of running back, struggled with pass protection. Brady, you don't cross that guy more than once. So if he misses an assignment or Brady gets walloped from the blind side or something like that, he's going to be in trouble. I'm a Keyshawn Vaughn guy. I think the guy has a lot of upside in that offense. So, I'll leave it at that. I'm not the real Joe guy. So I'll say no to the breakout in 2020. And there's another one, Bryce?
Yep, it's a trade question. This guy says he has Jeff Jacobs said he has David Montgomery and a first, and he wants to buy a better running back. Who would you target in a 1 QB 12 team dynasty PPR? Says he's got Mixon and Rojo already, so definitely could use a solid wide receiver or a running back too. I'm not sure who. Man, David Montgomery is a guy that's hard to gauge because of only having one season. So if you can find a guy that's high on him and then try and get maybe a running back from him, but I personally don't know. Man, that's hard because running backs are probably some of the hardest to gauge because they have such high and lows, and you don't know when they're going to fall off. Unlike wide receivers where they're more productive longer. Who would you guys think that you would grab, and who would you trade for David Montgomery in a first?
I'm trying to think. I'm struggling with that one. I see Montgomery as sort of a back end RB2, right? So Cohen's still relevant there. Nagy seemed to forget about Montgomery at times last year. Rookie running backs, if they don't do something in their first year, they tend to sometimes never do. And it's one of the reasons I don't like Jones so much. Gosh, I don't know. I'm really struggling to come up with someone. Jay, save me and bail me out and come up with a name. You're the guy who trades more than anyone I know. So you'll have an answer to this question.
The first guy that comes to mind, I might sound a little crazy, but I really do like Derrick Henry signing that extension, and I think he's pretty low right now. But if you're a win now, like if I would go out and get him, especially if that first is 6 or upwards. But I mean,
Yeah.
I just think he's undervalued, and dude's just huge. I mean, he's a tight end playing running back, so
Pick lands is obviously going to change things too, right? So if it's a weaker team and it's to Jay's point, a top 6 guy, then maybe you get a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's similar to me. It's kind of like Bryce's point with Rojo. Hang tight with Montgomery. He might do something this year. It's a second season.
Too.
And if he does, then you're going to get even more with that first round pick tied to it. But the Bears offense is going to be better this year. It can't really be worse. Mm-hmm. So that would be my thing, is hang on tight with Montgomery, see what you got there. Mm-hmm. You're playing a little bit of fire, but that's what I think you do.
Yeah. The last thing I would think is I'm looking at these lists, and it's like, if I was the owner of some of these guys, I wouldn't trade them for that. But then there's other players where it's like, if I had Montgomery in that first, I wouldn't trade them for these players. So it's like he's in that weird limbo area where it's like you can't quite gauge the value of who you want. You just have to. That's a hard one. I think I would just probably try and stick it out with them. You got 2 running backs there with Rojo and him. One of them is bound to at least put up.
I was gonna say, I think running back first. I would keep.
Yeah. Maybe wait throughout the season and try and trade Rojo if he can gain some value. Yep. That would be much safer if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
awesome.
That's all the questions on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. So just a reminder, like and subscribe, click that notification bell. If you're a member of the Facebook communities, both the Dynasty and the Redraft, you'll notice that our founder, Rick Butts, is hosting a contest right now. So he's giving away I can't remember what it is, like a Madden package and or a Fan Addicts $100 gift card. So I know you guys watching this are already subscribers to YouTube, but tell your friends. We're trying to get up over that magical 1,000 mark that we've all worked so hard for this off season. So if you can help us out by suggesting us to some of your friends, we would greatly appreciate it. And we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to thank you, Jay, for making a guest appearance. The Fantasy Inferno door is wide open for you anytime you want to come back. You were awesome.
I'll be back.
Bryce, we'd love to have you. Bryce, great as always. Remind everybody where we can find you. My pleasure. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm having fun. So just a reminder, guys, real quick, where the fans can find you, and then we'll call it a night.
Go ahead, Jay.
Just Facebook. I'm off social media for the most part, so hit me up on Facebook.
Yeah,
Sully,
we're very similar when it comes to young guys with social media. I've only got Facebook and then the Discord. Guys, join that Discord too. Like, anybody can join. It's free to join. Yep. You can just get your daily. If you got some trades you're questioning and you don't know who to talk to, there's plenty of people in there that will give you their opinions and things like that. There's just plenty of things to chat about in there. All right.
Agree 100%. Like I said at the top of the show, and you can see on the bottom of the screen there, I'm at RotoHeat Sully on Twitter. I'm the opposite. I'm the old guy who's active on social media. So Twitter, Facebook, Discord, and my podcast, Sully's 2 Cents Fantasy Football Podcast on Friday. I like to have a little fun there. And Jay, you need to do a better job selling yourself. Your written content is awesome. And everyone who's listening to this should go to the website and search Jacob Wallace and look at your written content. You're going to learn a ton about the Dynasty community. Jay's done a ton of work on our Dynasty Outlook series this year. So hats off to you for that. Bryce, thanks for being here. Jay, thanks for being here. And until next Wednesday night, everybody, we will say goodnight, and we'll see you then. Take care.
Yeah.
Are we out?
Don't forget, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any more fantasy football content from the rotoheat.com team. Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it. You want to.